Last week I spoke about whether we seek God in the dramatic events or in the quiet moments of life. Our default tends to be we seek God in the dramatic moments, whether it could be the retreat one goes on and it's a wonderful retreat and we're cresting on a wave, or it could be the day of marriage. You want like that to be every day of your married life. It could be those kinds of moments, and we want those transferred over into the everyday moments of life, but that's not where God tends to be found, in those kind of experiences. He is there, but I'm saying to extend those kind of experiences is simply not realistic. God is found in the quiet moments of life, in the vast majority that makes up our life, in the vast majority of times. And it's important that we know Jesus wants to meet us there. We tend to be looking for him in yesteryear, in that retreat, in that day of marriage, ordination, that powerful gathering of people, and so on, the prayer meeting, whatever it is, you fill in the blanks. If we are willing to spend time with him, we will experience change in our lives. But this takes something that I'm going to focus on, and that is perseverance, and looking for the right things when we pray. These things may not bring about more money. The health and wealth gospel you might see if you watch, this stuff after you've gone to Mass on TV is a bunch of bunk. It's actually a real deception. The health and wealth gospel. It was there back in the days of the Pharisees. Job was dealing with it. It's not new. So it's whether it's not going to result necessarily in more money or better looks, although if I had time, and that was the focus of this sermon, I could even draw out how a good solid prayer life, if we truly connect the dots in our day-to-day life, may result in better health. But we also may have a chronic illness that never goes away. So again, that's a talk unto itself, but it can result in taking care of ourselves better, because we're temples of the Blessed Trinity if we're in the state of grace. But that's not necessarily what we should look for. That may be a fruit of it. Okay, or it may not result in more friends. However, I could very easily show how it could result perhaps in fewer but better friends that are going to support us in our commitment to Christ, or where we're trying to be faithful to the Lord. What it will bring about, if we persevere and we're looking for the right things, is a lighter view of life. Life can be real heavy at times. And it's not like all the problems go away, but we get something that's not from ourselves, and we know ourselves well enough, we'll be able to detect this, that it comes from, what AA calls the higher power, but we know it to be Jesus Christ. And it's from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who sent his son into this world. It's from Jesus Christ. That's what we need to start looking for, tap into, a resilience to adversity. This is very difficult to detect sometimes if we're not paying attention. All of a sudden, we're able to face the difficulties and fight off discouragement. Is that from natural resilience? Perhaps. I know a few people who have caught my attention in life because they show extraordinary natural resilience. But that tends to be quite rare. As we learned in the seminary, I'm not made of steel. So I'm going to buckle and crack if I'm not accessing the one I need to access, and do certain things, to deal with the fact that I'm not made of steel. So we can't be the Lone Ranger in the spiritual life. We receive an internal strength to resist temptations of the flesh. That if we know ourselves well enough, we know this is not me. Yes, I have to accept this, but it's not me. It's something different. And St. Paul understood this, not because he was some Superman. Jesus had to impress it upon him so you and I would actually come to an awareness when he begged the Lord to take away this temptation of the flesh. He does it, this thorn in the flesh, I should say, which is never specified, and it's always speculated about. But the Lord's answer is what's key. I'm not taking this away, because in weakness, my power is perfected. So, Paul, you need this, and I'm going to watch over you. And as long as you're connected with me, you will always be able to defeat this. But if you don't stay connected with me, you're toast. Now, Jesus didn't use those words, but the sentiment was there, and Paul understood this, so he says, I glory in my weakness, so the power of Christ may rest upon me. So this kept Paul connected to Christ for many, many reasons, obviously ultimately for love, but even this awareness that if I depart from him, I'm done. I'm going to cave to all of my passions. And it will even help us in our the commitments that we've made. Again, we might think, well, that's just from my natural resilience or love or sense of duty and so on. But, more and more people today find this very difficult to sustain. And it's not just in the divorce rates. Guys leaving the priesthood. It's everywhere, everywhere. Friendships breaking up. People can't deal with adversity. So who doesn't want what I've just said, comes from, is a fruit of prayer, will happen if we persevere in prayer. It's not the only thing, but it's absolutely foundational and essential. So I experience stress, and I'm sure all of you do it for a number of reasons. And this is one of the reasons why we need to not only pray, but persevere in prayer. And, I hear lots of things about why people don't pray and so on. Sometimes it's, well, I don't feel anything, so. I try not to come across as mean or cruel. But I'm trying to make the person realize that it's not about feelings. Ask a mother or father when they get up at 3 in the morning and their baby's diaper needs to be changed if that's about feelings. Feelings. No, it has nothing to do with feelings. It has everything to do with love and doing what needs to be done for the good of the other. And you don't feel good about it at all, except your baby now is quite happy because everything's changed. So same thing with prayer, and it can go on for a long time like this. So not only to pray, but to persevere in prayer. And maybe you don't even struggle with the reality of prayer because could be you're not interested. Or maybe your thoughts go to that place where you say, I really can't do that amount of praying each day. Or I don't see the beneficial outcome. I don't see, as the business world says, I don't see the deliverables. And I would submit because I don't think you're looking in the right place. Or maybe you're not really being faithful. You're not really persevering the way you need to persevere. Like if you're sitting there in prayer for 30 minutes and you're listening to an audiobook, wrong, it's not the way you pray. Doesn't mean you can't read anything, but if you're doing that for 30 minutes and then nothing's happening, then, well, okay, try to listen to what I'm saying. And know full well that I can't say everything about prayer. It's impossible. But I'm trying to at least give this essential thing that all of us need, and that is to persevere in prayer, to kind of get one going and to keep one going. There's so many other things that need to be communicated. So whatever the situation might be, it's important for each of us to know that Jesus wants this communication with us, and he's not going to force it. Jesus wants this friendship with us. He desires to bless us in so many ways. He desires to let us know, he desires us to for us to let him into our lives, into what stresses us. Lord, this is stressing me out right now. And so I want you to come into this stress in my life. And not just one time or for 1 second, and if you don't get what you desire, then you don't pray anymore. It's not about that. No marriage would work if it was like that. It's a commitment to pray and to trust that he will come into that moment of stress and help you to get through it. Maybe not eliminate it, but help you to get through it. Or what we obsess over or can't let go of, worry too much about. Some things I'm a worrywart over. Have you ever heard the term worrywart? You're just too young. But the older people know what that expression means. It means you worry something that makes you crazy. You can't not worry about it. And sometimes it occupies all of our, as we say, rental space. It occupies all of our airspace, like sometimes, our mind, our emotions. We obsess over it, we worry about it. Jesus wants all these areas of our life to be what we invite him into so that he can help us deal with these things. And again, it doesn't mean they're all going to go away like that. But if we persevere in prayer, we will begin to see the benefits that come from fidelity to him. Did you know, just to learn how this can happen, we need to turn to the gospel for some insight. Did you know that Jesus apparently loses only 2 arguments in all of the New Testament, and they're both to women? Go figure. One is at Cana, running out of wine. No guy says to him, they're running out of wine. It's the mom who says, son, they're running out of wine. And he says, what does that mean to you? Now, this is a whole discussion unto itself. He's not being rude to her, putting her off. But he had no intention of doing this. That's very clear. And rather than turn to the guests or to the stewards and say, well, he's not going to do it, not yet. What does she do? She says, do whatever he says. So she puts it back on him. And he does it. Presumably, he would not have done it before, but he does it. She wins the argument. Not really an argument, but. Well, the only other time is in today's gospel. All right, this Gentile woman, and worst of all, Canaanite woman, there's the Jews, North Pole, there's the Canaanites, South Pole. That's how far these people were apart. She comes to him, and the end result is she wins the argument, as it were. Jesus, number one, doesn't pay any attention to her. She's shouting after him so he can hear this quite clearly. And then he appears to insult her, but he's not insulting her. That's impossible. So she perseveres in her request because he knows what's inside of her and he wants to bring it out for all of us to see. She perseveres in prayer and comes right back at him with the one thing that Jesus cannot resist, and that's humility. And in her humility, she says, I know I don't deserve anything from you. I don't deserve anything, but I'm asking for it anyways. I'll take whatever you can give me. Now, when Jesus gives us a crumb, it's like the universe. That's the whole point here. But you and I, Catholics, you could put Catholics rather than Jews in there, we have no rights before God. We can't demand anything of him. Everything is grace. Even if I'm praying up a storm and doing 100 holy hours, I can't demand anything. I did all this, you owe me that. And sometimes that's a problem we have with God. We expect an exchange relationship. I exchanged my sacrifice here, and then you owe me, what I'm asking for. No, it's not the way it works. So all of these things we have to wrestle through if we're going to persevere in prayer. She perseveres and comes right back at him with humility. Jesus responds by granting her request, and then a compliment that he gives only one other time to another Gentile, when he says, woman, great is your faith. It's your faith. Great is your faith has led you to be humble enough to acknowledge you have no rights before me. And because that's what I want all the Jewish people to understand. That's what I want all the Catholics to understand. That's what I want all the other people in the world to understand. You show it. You're right. I'll give you exactly what you're asking for. In this case, her daughter is healed of the demonic possession. Jesus once again seems to do something he was not going to do because of her faith. Same thing with the centurion. Never in Israel have I seen faith like this. Her faith was a huge faith, but a faith that would not have manifested if she had not persevered in prayer. Imagine if after the first time she said, give me a break, I'm out of here. I don't have to take this from you. We wouldn't have read about it in the gospel. After the second time, I took it once. I'm not taking this again. You've just insulted me. We wouldn't have, and she left. We wouldn't read about it in the gospel. But she doesn't. And it's not like she's putting up with him. She senses something, because Jesus can't be rude to anybody. The very fact that when the apostle said, why don't you just get rid of her? He says, yeah, get rid of her. He doesn't say that. What he says is, I've come to feed the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So she understands what's going on here at some level. So it's because she perseveres in prayer, her wish is granted. There's no doubt that this woman was worried about her daughter, but she could have given up because Jesus appeared, as I just said, to have ignored her and then appeared to insult her, but she persevered in her prayer. You and I will have many reasons to avoid prayer. And then if we begin to pray, there will be many reasons to not persevere, to give up. These reasons could be anything from the very stresses that fully occupy us, because we don't see deliverables. We don't see immediate results or results after a period of time. Or it could be the very stresses that fully occupy us lead us to simply not persevere in prayer. Perhaps we do not think that prayer will bring about a true resolution to the problems we are having to deal with. Or we'd rather ignore the problems. Or we say, I'm just too busy. This really is a waste of time. At the same time, all these very things that lead us away from prayer continue to cause us stress. They absorb our time, weigh us down, occupy our attention, impede our joy in life. And we keep giving in to the temptations we struggle with, and we don't see any way out. This is one of the most difficult things I have with trying to advise people. Really, I mean, from the heart, trying to advise people, because I want them so much to be able to let Christ in so that he can help them break out or show them there's light at the end of the tunnel. When they are struggling, I don't know how to break out of this. I mean, my heart really goes out to people who are caught in this. And I am not perfect, I can assure you. That's why I go to confession once a week. And I get direction and so on. So it's trying to help people get to the point where they really open up to Christ and experience it's not about you, but he does need your consent. Let him get into the driver's seat. And then people say, what does that look like? Well, if you let me talk for an hour, I could try to get into that, but I won't do that to you. But it's about letting Christ into the driver's seat. It's about letting him, his word, form your mind, your heart, your soul. It's about changing our whole way of thinking, our whole way of even living, the time we spend on the machines and so on. But Jesus is the only one who has the power to do this, and he wants to do this so badly for us. This woman in today teaches us to persevere in prayer. I would like everyone to try and imagine, to repeat what I said last week, what this parish would look like if every person took up the challenge to spend 30 minutes of quiet time each day for one solid month. Give it a try. Can you imagine what the parish would be like? What you would be like? We often miss the incredible blessings that God wants to give us because we do not persevere in the time we commit to praying. I can see, or at least I got a little window into what this could look like as I heard the World Youth Day pilgrims share about their experiences in getting on board and doing a holy hour because of what Father Richard was calling them to do. Renella spoke at the 9 o'clock Mass. She's 16. When I was 16, I was not doing a holy hour. I can assure you of that. I was playing basketball. It's all I could have, and it's all I could do. But to see a young person do this tells me it can be done. A lot of young people, they're not praying. They don't know how to pray. They've never been shown how to open their heart to see the passion that can come into them if they are willing to submit themselves to prayer, to Christ. So you see these World Youth Day pilgrims, and there's going to be a testimony at the end of Mass. There has been for the 5 and the 9. Almost all of them realized that they could really do a holy hour. That was probably the biggest surprise to all of them. And some did not want the holy hour to end as time went on, because it takes a while. It's like any discipline. It takes a while to develop the facility, the disponibilité, as the French say, to actually sitting there and conversing with Christ. It's a powerful insight as to what could happen, what would happen if we get on board, as it were, and let Jesus in. And you know, just one little thing it means, if we're going to get up, especially when you have kids, I've mentioned this before when I talked to Matthew Leonard. He has this great site, Science of Sainthood. He's got 5 kids. When you got 5 kids, if you don't get up early and pray, you ain't praying. Or at least you're going to pray on the go. So he's got to get up. He knows when he has to get up because he knows when his kids get up. So you have to get up at a certain time, count backwards. Most people need at least 7.5 hours of sleep. That's when you need to go to bed. You see where the discipline starts to kick in? And if you're not willing to go to bed when you need to go to bed to get the sleep you need to get in order to get up and pray, it ain't going to happen. Or it's only going to happen for a few days, and then you're burned out. You're tired, I should say, and you're groggy and grumpy and grouchy. So the discipline goes backwards, and that, so there's no secret sauce to this. But that's where I want this, I want this, I want this, and this is what I got to start doing. So persevere to the end. If everyone here actually tried 30 minutes of prayer each day, no break days, for 1 month, and you sincerely sought to be with Jesus, you were prepared to persevere to the end, and you prayed for the grace to just be there, then you would experience many things. But you got to detect what these things are. One of which is, I believe your stress levels will either go down or they will become more manageable. A fire, a spiritual fire, would ignite in your life and in this parish. And we would all desire more opportunities to pray, as these young people have actually testified. So begin with 30 minutes each day and persevere in your prayer for 1 month. I'm really convinced you'll want more.